Oh boy, are we about to learn about animal behavior? Yes, we are. But first, we should probably talk about some really bad ideas historically to put some context on what we're going to learn about animal behavior. Bad ideas like nature versus nurture. Yes, nature versus nurture was a kind of a bad idea historically. And what about reinforcement theory? Well, it had its uses, but it's just not reality. Yeah, and I guess universality is another one we should learn about. Yes, let's start with nature versus nurture.
Well, this idea here, we're looking at nature versus nurture. This is the nurture variant of that. That's that genes don't matter. And so what you're seeing here is a baby being tortured, essentially. This is the tragic tale of little baby Albert. You may have heard about in psychology class. This is carried out at Johns Hopkins University, and they had a little orphan baby, Albert, and they're showing that Albert's not afraid of furry things. So they throw a monkey at him, a little dog, and baby Albert is quite happy. Ooh, a cute little white rat. So they're trying to show that all animal behaviors, including human behaviors, are a result of nurture early on in life, that you can train up an individual to behave in any way you want. Okay? So they conditioned him to be afraid of furry things. And they did that by presenting him with a nice furry rat and then smashing a giant gong behind his head to scare the crap out of him. Right? So that's infant torture. Different times, I guess. So he's afraid of furry things now. He has been conditioned to expect pain and suffering. Alright, so he's afraid of that. He's afraid of even a fur coat. Starts crying, doesn't like it. And just like any sane human, he's afraid of the creepy guy in the clown mask coming at him. Well, that was fun. Of course, the counterpoint of nurture are the people who say that everything is inborn. All right, so it's all genetic. No matter what, you were never going to reach some certain level of intelligence because you just weren't born that way. For example, it's the brain power. Um, this kind of thinking is very famous historically, led to the Holocaust and to the justification of slavery in the U.S. The idea that whatever the hell this means, winning is somewhat maybe innate. First off, that doesn't mean anything. Secondly, it's horribly wrong.
So people who think that nurture is everything are really overlooking all the genetic components. Yes, and people who think that nature is everything have a very dim view of humanity and, well, all animals, and don't think that any learning is possible. Can we talk about something nice instead? Like pigeons? This here's just really depressing.
Well, you join me live outside St Nicholas Church, and it's pigeon dressage that has our attention for the next few moments. And our focus is drawn to this man, runner-up last year, of course, and hoping this year to go one better and claim top spot. And you can tell he's been preparing for this for a long time. He's got 2 standard legs and all of his toes, so vastly unlike most of the crackhead pigeons you see around these parts, and you can see how keen he is to disassociate himself from the rest, but occasionally blending in momentarily as they feast on, is it rice? Seed? Probably vomit. What comes up must go down. Disgusting.
Can pigeons read? This one gives every indication, because he's been taught to distinguish between 2 words and to behave appropriately. He's learned his different response to each sign by being rewarded with food. So the bird isn't acting independently. Its behavior is shaped by controlling its environment. The first task was to isolate an individual piece of behavior and see how that could be changed. Skinner did this by keeping individual pigeons at about 3/4 of their normal weight, so that the birds were always hungry, and food could be used as an automatic reward. The pigeon was studied in a uniform box, one it quickly grew used to. One piece of behavior, pecking a coloured disc, was measured on a graph. The pigeon learned that pecking the disc produced a reward. Then the behavior of pecking could be studied in relation to how often that reward was offered, or in Skinner's terms, what was the schedule of reinforcement?
The main thing is what we call schedules of reinforcement. Reinforcement is what the layman calls reward, and you can schedule it so that a reward occurs every now and then when a pigeon does something. We usually use a response with a pigeon pecking a little disc, a little spot on the wall, and you can reinforce with food, but you don't reinforce every time. Perhaps every 10th time, or perhaps only once every minute or something like that. There are a very large number of schedules, and they have their special effects. And there is a good example of how you can move from the pigeon to the human case, because one of the schedules which is very effective with rats or pigeons is what we call the variable ratio schedule, and that is at the heart of all gambling devices, and has the same effect. The pigeon can become a pathological gambler just as a person can. Now, the fact that we found that out with pigeons and could prove it by removing and changing the schedule makes it easy for us to interpret the case with the human subject. We don't say that the human subject gambles to punish himself, as the Freudians might say, or gambles because he feels excited when he does so. Nothing of the sort. People gamble because of the schedule of the reinforcement that follows, and this is true of all gambling systems. They all have variable ratios built into them. So what we've learned from the pigeon, it made it possible to interpret this vast field very effectively.
So this is B.F. Skinner, the pigeon guy, and he was a pioneer of reinforcement theory, which you just saw. The idea that it's either negative or positive reinforcement, that's the only thing shaping behavior. Well, he made some pigeons do some cool stuff, but it's not really a robust understanding of animal behavior. He also made some other errors there. You heard right at the end, he was talking about how we could take what we learned from the pigeons and apply it directly to humans. Well, that's the bad idea of universality. The idea that what works in one species works the same in all of them. For instance, it wouldn't work on me.
And there you have it, against the backdrop of some really bad ideas, some horrible historical events based on quote-unquote animal behaviorism. We come up with ethology, the study of animal behavior. And ethology's goals are to remain unattached to those archetypes of behaviorism, like universality, reinforcement theory, or this nature versus nurture dichotomy. And this led to some so many problems and unethical research. All right. In ethology, animal behavior is based on physiological systems and processes. Okay? It's the nervous system's response to a stimulus carried out by the muscular or the hormonal system. All right, this is important. In order to have behavior, you have to have a nervous system, some stimulus, and a muscular or hormonal system. All right, so that kind of limits which organisms can be said to have true behavior.